All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm Joel here with my dad.
And I'm Rick, and looking forward to another podcast together.
Yes. Today I want to talk about something that I've seen my dad actually be really good at, and that is change. And I don't know if that's a function of your personality, that you're already pretty chill anyway, so you don't
You think
mind
so?
change. Yeah, you're pretty relaxed. And so you don't mind change that much, but I know that for some people change is really hard. And I think for a lot of people, the older you get, the more change threatens you. Um,
Well, probably the harder it is to deal with.
yeah, so you just
Yeah.
turned 65, but like even just now today, we were talking about how, different things online of like you're wanting to get more involved in using YouTube and things like that. So, what makes you, is that a conscious effort or is that like a,
Yeah, it's actually very conscious because I realize that things are happening so quickly now that if you're not keeping up, very quickly you're irrelevant. You're just kind of going through your own little life and doing your own little thing, and you're not connecting with people around you because people connect differently now than they did 10 years ago or 5 years ago for that matter. And so, I'm not ready to crawl into a hole and die yet. So,
so what about people that, okay, so here's what I've noticed. I've noticed that like people get to a certain age, people of a certain age, and they go one of two directions. They either flip out, which is the, try and relive
get
their
the red
youth,
convertible,
the
which I
red,
thought of that. I think that
yeah,
would be awful cool.
get
But
the red convertible, trade in their spouse for a younger version or whatever. But then you have other people that basically go, what I know has gotten me this far, and they've been
yeah,
relatively successful, and they say, thus far will I come and no further because I don't know if it's I'm tired or, and then they end up saying things like kids these days.
yeah, yeah. If I ever say that, I hope my hair falls out. Well, it's falling out anyway, but yeah. I think some of that maybe, a lot of it is people are afraid to do anything that makes them feel inadequate or. I think of when we were learning language, I was like 30 something when I went to Guatemala to seriously learn language. I'd piddled around with being able to order tacos at Taco Bell, But when I got serious about learning Spanish, you feel like a 2-year-old.
You can't even say anything.
No, and not even a 2-year-old. And then I had a guy tell me one time, he says, "You talk like Tarzan." I go to a store today. Well, I'm glad I can just talk. You at least know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
And
It's
so I
humbling.
think that's a lot of it, yeah, is that I don't want to be humbled. I don't want to appear foolish. And so therefore, rather than just saying, well, I'm stuck in my ways and I don't want to appear foolish, you blame everybody else.
Right, right.
And so it's, everybody else is wrong.
Yeah, so I'm 40 something now here trying to learn French. And I mean, I've been goofing around with French for a while, but this is like the first time I'm actually trying to really like go for it. And we just got back from France, and
Yeah.
it's like you think you know all this stuff, and then somebody just talks to you, and you're just like,
Yeah. Well,
And
that's
so,
the hard part. You got all these phrases down and you're doing great. Man, I know the phrases. I know how to ask where the market is. And then they tell you and you go, I don't know what they said.
and so you feel totally helpless.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's what I think a lot of people in the face of changing technology. And man, technology
Yeah.
now, it used to take 10 years for technology to change. They say the
Oh.
rate is just doubling and tripling of
Yeah.
change. And I mean, some people you just turned 65, and some people get to your age and say,
Yeah. Sometimes I think people are afraid of appearing embarrassed. Sometimes they're just tired.
yeah, that's a lot of,
I don't even know where to begin. And that's some of it too, is I don't even know where to begin. So you don't even think to Google something, well, hey, it's out there.
yeah,
But if you don't even know that, or you go out there and they're using terminology that you don't even know what they're telling you.
yeah.
Sometimes you don't even know the questions to ask. And so some of it is they just get tired. And that's why I guess I'm kind of really adamant on staying up.
Yeah.
Because if I'm just a little bit behind, it's okay. I don't have to be the cutting edge of everything. But at least I want to know what people are talking about.
So let me bring a little King Solomon into this. King Solomon, he talks about not removing an ancient boundary stone. So I think a lot of times what people get hung up on is they're like, this has been the story of humanity.
Yeah.
Removing an ancient boundary stone. We don't even know what we're doing by moving this, but really, maybe it's not. So how do you know when it's something that you really need to embrace as a real change, or is this actually as moving a boundary stone that you should stand firm and say, I'm not changing on this one? And that's where I think that's where it gets tricky. Jesus
Yeah.
talking about he's, God's always doing something new, and he never changes, but he works in different ways.
Right.
And then so he brings in this verse where he says, you don't pour new wine, which is always expanding, into old wineskins,
Right.
or otherwise they'll break. So if you get too rigid, you're going to crack under the pressure. But then there's also the idea of you got to stand on principles. And so
Yeah.
how do you know when you're standing on a principle, an ancient boundary stone that doesn't need to be moved, or you're just because you don't want to be swept away by cultural changes.
Right, yeah, because I mean, in James it talks about being tossed around by every wind of doctrine and every little thing that comes along, too. So, I think there are very few really rigids, and I think you could find the moral, when it's a moral principle. In other words, no matter what come down the pike, if it has to do with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, those are the uncompromisable. They're okay. But if it just has to do with how you're communicating or something,
Right, which is what we get hung up on a lot of times. The medium.
yeah,
The medium has changed because the medium is the method, or whatever they say that. Yeah.
yeah,
And you get hung up on the medium,
yeah,
which is what kills so many churches.
yeah. Well, I actually, as you know, in 2000, I went back to pastor a church that I'd been out of the country for a few years and then had been just leading missions work. And when I went back, I felt like a missionary because I had to figure out, how do I reach this culture? Because I immediately saw that the things that I was used to doing before when I was an associate pastor at that same church with many of the same people no longer connected with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to figure out, okay, so these are the same people I know. Some of them are my age, but the same thing wasn't connecting with them, let alone with people outside the church, which is what I was interested in reaching. So I kind of had to set out on a quest, and I just had to look at guys, I think most of them were younger than me, who were successful at it. And not just copy, because that doesn't work, because, I look stupid trying to act like a 16-year-old, but to figure out, what are the principles behind this? Why is what they're doing working? How is that connecting with this culture? How is that connecting with people? And then be willing to change. And I guess in that case, I did some surfing when I was a few years younger, and I realized right away that when you see waves rolling in, you don't catch the first wave, because you'll see they come in sets, and I don't even know the surfer talk for it. I never got into that much, but I would notice that, okay, all the guys had watched the first 2 or 3 or 4, and then you'd see one building out there, and you go, that's the one. And then you get all set up, and you're ready to paddle to catch that one when it's coming in. And the guys that were new at it, when I first got out there, oh, here comes a wave. So I'd be paddling like crazy, and it just roll right under me because it never amounted to anything.
Huh.
And so part of it is, and again, I think you listen to the Lord on this, because I had a similar situation when I was, 30 or something. I felt like the Lord told me I was going to lead a church through a major change, because I saw my pastor lead the church through a cultural shift at that time back. It was into the charismatic movement. And I felt like the Lord said, you're going to do this one of these days. So really for about 30 years, I've been kind of saying, okay, is this it? Is this it? And there would be these little waves that would come along, and there was this movement and that movement and this and that. And I was just kind of sensed in my heart, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. And then when I got into this position there, all of a sudden I realized, this is it. This is changing lives. This is making a difference. You can see the waves building. It's not just a little ripple that comes along with a few people shouting and jumping hooray, But you could really see this is making a difference in people's lives. And so I said, okay, I got to figure out how to ride this wave, how to figure out what this wave is, first of all, and ride it. So I don't know if that helps any, but I do. I guess I'm saying, there's a lot of fake things that come along, and you just let those roll under you.
So I guess that would be a challenge for I think there's some personalities that they call them early adopters.
Yeah.
They're ready for anything new. They'll try it. I think Jonathan, my brother, your son, is kind of like that. And I'll never forget one time we're sitting in a staff meeting. He's like, hey, man, there's this thing you're going to sign up for. It's going to be huge. And I was like, what is it? It's Twitter.
Twitter, I know.
And I got a great name, thanks to him, Joel Malm, on Twitter, which I have like 89 followers, because I just don't like Twitter.
Yeah.
But man, he saw that trend as soon as it popped in. And I was like, what? I didn't even see the trend. So, but I think a challenge for early adopters would be, you got to make sure you're not jumping on every wave, or you're going to be exhausted.
By nature, I'm an early adopter.
Really?
I mean, when Mazda came out with a rotary engine, man, I had a rotary engine, and it would have been awesome if air pollution had been the main thing. But when fuel economy got more important, it went down the tubes, because it burned really clean, but it was bad gas mileage. And I kind of learned from that. I thought, okay, man, I got to kind of wait and see, let things sort of be tested here. I mean, I'm one that would jump out, let's get an electric car. Wow, that's awesome. But maybe we ought to wait until we have a place to plug it in. I just realized I kind of learned from that Wankel engine, that rotary engine, that maybe I need to just wait until they're tested a little bit because there's some bugs that need to be worked out, and then you can tell if it's a real wave too.
Which may be also why I think some people struggle with changes. Maybe they've seen something they
got burned.
They invested in and it just didn't work out. So I think a lot of people. You're not gonna I'm gonna wait till it's tried and true and proven.
Well, and I remember the first time I heard of Twitter too. I thought that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Who would?
What could you possibly say in that few characters?
And what do you do with it?
Yeah,
it's like, so what? Who cares? Yeah, blogs. I've had about the same opinion about blogs.
So I'm just trying to figure out, what do you people who are resistant to change naturally? Is there anything wrong with that?
No, I think, it's like every tool in the toolbox has its purpose. And there are people who kind of drag along behind, and they can kind of keep us focused on the things that are important, as well. Thank God for the early adopters. You need somebody to walk out on the ice and break through and find out, it's not thick enough yet. Yeah. Let's see but some of those old guys who are staying back on the shore, they can throw them a rope and pull them out, So, we all have our different places in there.
Yeah, so I'm thinking in terms of leading. When you're leading someone,
yeah,
you're always going to have people that I'll never forget when I worked at Southwest Airlines. I had only been there like 6 months, and they gave everybody in the company, like the company-wide, a copy of this book, Who Moved My Cheese, which is a book, a classic book. Spencer Johnson, I think, is the writer of it. And it's basically about being adaptable, being flexible. And I'm like, I'm 18, just got hired, just learned the job. And I'm like, why did they waste money giving everybody? I mean, the book is probably several bucks. They spent all this money there. And I was like, what a waste of money. I read the book, but then a couple months later, they rolled out a new computer system. And man, we had people actually quitting.
Yeah.
Like they would cash in their retirement because they're like, I'm not going to learn this new system. I'm like, how crazy that you get so set in your ways that you're willing to like quit your job to not have to deal with the change. And I know that's a struggle. I got a buddy who does this Six Sigma thing where he brings kind of lean practices to businesses, and he has to go and interview managers. And as soon as the manager's see him coming, most of them are like, a couple years from retirement. And he says, dude, they withhold information. And because he said, they do not want me to mess with anything before their retirement, because then they're going to have to do exerting all this effort and learning new stuff. So it can be I think it can be really hard. And the older you get, I mean, I'm already seeing myself starting to get a little rigid. I'm like, well, I just don't need to learn that.
Yeah. I ran into a guy on a plane one time, and I was talking to him, and so what is it you do? And I don't know, he drove trucks or something like that. And I said, have you done that all your life? He says, no, I used to be a computer programmer. I said, you went from computer programming to driving trucks? And he goes, yeah, why? He said, I just got so tired, I would work my way up to the top, and I was the go-to guy. I'm the go-to guy. Man, if you have a question, go to him. He said, then they come out with something new, and boom, I'm the old dog.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything. He's outdated. And so I'd work my way back up again, and now I'm the go-to guy. He said, I just got tired of climbing the ladder and being knocked off by some young guy who was something new come in. And I thought, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now he's happy. He's driving trucks. Not much changes in driving trucks.
So how do you buffer or protect yourself from being a victim of change?
Well, with me, again, I look back at the old wineskins things, is be willing to be flexible. I think a part of it, too, is it's too easy, again, I'll give a couple examples, one that relates to you. I come from a charismatic type of background where worship is kind of, you sing hallelujah 50 times and your hands are up and there's this deep moment. And you were leading worship over at Cornerstone, Youth of Fire, Youth Flame, whatever what that was, yeah. And so I came one night, and man, there's people jumping and shouting, and it was it was just really a real kicking concert kind of a thing, And so afterwards you asked me, he says, what do you think about that? I said, well, it was awesome, it was great, but it wasn't worship. And you said, yeah, it was. You don't remember this, do you? and And I said, no, it wasn't, because I'm thinking, hallelujah, hallelujah. And you said, well, yeah, it was. And I thought, well, I'm not going to argue with the kid. I'm not going to convince him. Later, I went away and we actually came another time and I watched the people and I realized, okay, they're connecting with God.
Mm.
I thought that is really what worship is. It's connecting with God. And so, okay, this is like totally different than what I'm used to. But I immediately made the default that, oh, this isn't real. It isn't what I'm used to. And I really learned from that. And I made a lot of mental notes based on that one experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when Twitter comes along, everybody's, oh, these young people don't communicate. They don't communicate. And I was at a conference with Jonathan. You were there as well, I think, that one he put together up in Dallas. And this guy comes up to him, hey, Jonathan, how you doing? How's Cotto? He goes, oh, I'm great. And they're hugging each other. And, oh, man. And I said, well, who's that guy? He goes, oh, he's from up at Chicago, the Willow Creek up there. And he's there something or other. And I go, well, how'd you meet him? Oh, that's the first time we've met.
We're Twitter friends.
Yeah. We were, what?
Which deep
Twitter.
inside of me still goes, maybe because I'm old school, I'm like, that's not a real friend.
I'm the same way, but they were like best buds, man. They knew their kid, they knew their wives' names and what was going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I had to go, okay, there I am again. I've got to remember that just because it's not what I'm used to,
Mm-hmm.
it's like driving in England, Well, they drive on the wrong side of the road, and the steering wheel's on the wrong side of the car, and the gas pedal's messed up. This is all wrong. No, it's just different than what I'm used to.
So, I mean, it sounds like the way you immunized yourself from being a victim of change and like change causing so much trouble that you end up being the guy that's like, I'm checked out of, is what I kind of hear is, first of all, flexibility.
Yeah.
Which you're naturally good at that. You're naturally a more flexible person. Emily's a naturally more flexible person.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is what I've gotten from Emily. I'm not the most flexible individual. I tend to like my way or the highway. So I've had to learn flexibility. And it does, if you can just kind of let it roll off of you. And but then also there's an element of lifelong learning.
Yeah, and hold back on the judgments. Yeah, holding back that, well, that's different. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's not worship.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are just shouting and jumping up and down. Well, what is the foundation is connection with God. So if they're connected with God, it's maybe different than what I'm used to.
How many a pastor has been run out of churches because people don't hold back judgment on something new a pastor brings in? They say, we want, when in the interview, it's like, yeah, well, I'm going to bring some changes. Whoa, we want that,
Oh,
pastor.
we want change,
Oh,
yeah.
we want change. And then you start making the change, and they're like,
Yeah.
and then so judgment immediately.
Yeah.
And then the crazy thing is, you can even see the fruit of it. New people coming to the church, people that haven't been Christians before coming to church, and people still go,
Yeah.
no.
We want change as long as it's not different from what we have now.
Yeah, that's
but we really do want change.
Yeah. We would change on our terms that's not different.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So as soon as I can't tell you how many pastors I've talked to that as soon as they brought in the drums or moved out the organ or even moved the position of the piano, it's like they were on the chop block, man. Yeah. Because, So then there's the withholding judgment, but then I think there's also that lifelong learning piece.
Yeah, being willing to look like an idiot, really.
Which is
Or
what is
goof things up.
essentially... I guess my question is, like, you've only got so much time and energy, so do you pursue things that are of interest to you, or should you pursue everything? I mean, what do you do in terms of, like, I'll recommend a book, and then I'll find out later you're reading it, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's impressive, Dad.
Well, I try and narrow it down. Like your latest hero author, I said, okay, so you've read like 10 books by him.
Yeah.
If I were to read one, which one would you recommend? And then I can go from there. Okay, if that's the best he's got, I'll read another one. That's the best he's got. I'm not going to waste my time on another one by him.
There you go.
So
it's finding what's striking a chord with somebody younger than you that you see has what's something of value to offer, maybe, and then kind of trying to see what's working for them.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do it, and I'm real blessed because I've got like you and Jonathan and Karis.
Jonathan's really edgy. I'm not very edgy, but yeah.
But I've got you guys that I can kind of draw from. But if they weren't there, you can still connect with people. I mean, that's the amazing thing about what we have today. You can connect with people through podcasts and see, okay, so here's a church that's effective in doing something. They may not do it the way I do it,
right.
But are they reaching people?
Yeah.
And if they're reaching people, I can sit there and grumble about, well, it's just pablum. All those sermons are just feel-good stuff, or,
I was gonna say you can come up with
whatever.
an excuse for why anything's working. Like
Yeah.
that's a sinful reason. Oh, that's
Yeah.
because they're compromising the gospel while those people are showing
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just easy to say that. You know, I remember one guy, wow, they just paint the walls of their church black. You know, it's like a nightclub, and that's why all those people are coming. I'm going, you mean tell me if you painted the walls of your church black that people start coming here like that
Yeah,
too?
yeah.
I think there's more to it than that.
It's true.
You know? So figure out what's happening there and then be willing to change. And you can find people that you can, you know, people that are successful in whatever it is you're called to do. Find the folks that are making the difference in there and then figure the principles out. Don't try and copy them because it's not going to work for you to try and be them. But figure out what is the underlying principle and then utilize that.
That's a good point. And then that's where you can size it up against, is anything actually being asked to be compromised here, where you're moving the ancient boundary stone?
Yeah.
But again, we get so caught up in the shell of what I think about that church. There was a church down the street from us.
Oh yeah.
And they had this beautiful campus, beautiful building. It was all paid for, but the church was dwindling and aging and dwindling and aging. They'd get rid of a pastor and bring in another one. He'd try and bring change. They'd get rid of him. Eventually, it got to the point where the church was and every time the new pastor would leave, this church would shrink more.
Yeah.
They get to the point where they had to decide: are we going to keep a pastor or our building? And they elected to keep the building. And then, for obvious reasons, it kept dwindling. And you're thinking the whole time they're sitting on millions of dollars worth of property. If they could have
huge.
sold, moved to a different building, like outside of town, and then stuck that money in an account, that they would have had enough to pay a pastor till all of them went home to be with the Lord, because they only had a few more years, most of them anyway.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't do it. They were so stuck on that shell. And I get it, because you're also like, well, my kids were raised here. So there's the sentimentality.
Yeah.
My kid went to Sunday school in that class. We can't just go sell in this building.
Yeah.
And you get hung up on the sentimentality of it, I think, too.
Yeah, and we were actually looking at, as we were growing, you remember buying that church. And so I was talking with a couple of the older ladies from that church, because that's basically who was there.
Yeah.
And one of them said, oh, I just wish we could bring in some young people and, you know, bring some life back to the church. And I'm thinking, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You say you do if they would come in and sing the songs you like and
Do it our way.
Yeah, but you really wouldn't. That's not going to draw them in. So either you have to change or they have to change. And here's the deal: many times we want, well, them young people need to change. The mature always slows down so the younger one can keep up. You're walking down the street with your little girl, and you don't just take your big strides and say, well, keep up, by golly. You slow down so that the more immature ones can keep up with you. And if you're not willing to do that, then they're going to go at their own pace, and you're going to go your own way.
So, but I mean, in some ways, when you're saying the mature slow down, what you're actually saying in some ways is the mature are willing to be flexible for those who don't quite
Right.
see it the way they see it.
Right.
That's true maturity.
Yeah, I'm gonna be willing to sacrifice some of what I would want. You know, it's like we were talking in another podcast about if this church isn't ministering to my child, you know, a good parent will suffer pretty much through anything if their kid's being ministered to, because they can be self-feeders. They can get into the Word themselves, and they can, you know, do it themselves. But your kids need that environment where they're going to be encouraged and feel like church is worth going to. And so you're willing to sacrifice and go to a church that you think is just like a total waste of time, maybe. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully you can find something that's both. But you'd be willing to sacrifice because it's more important that I care for this one and be bringing her up in the nurture.
I think was Andy Stanley got in trouble a few years ago for saying something to the effect of, you want church a certain way, and so you force your kids to go to this thing, and he's like, you know, I think he got in trouble because he called it some small church.
Small church, yeah.
You're like, small church. But I think the essence of what he was saying is, maybe you need to change your likes to go to a place where your kid is getting fed, even though you're like, well, I don't like that music, or I don't even like that preacher.
Right.
But if your kids are on fire, that would be the maturity element of it, is I'm willing to change my preferences to see the younger generation brought into what I've experienced, which is a huge part of that flexibility element of, I don't like the way it is. I don't like the technology. I don't like the fact that they're using this phone instead of, one-on-one conversations. But the reality is that's just the doorway to them. Like, I'm going to have to text my son to get him to come and meet with me or whatever. So you got to, at some point, you have to say, okay, I'm going to surrender a little bit to it. Yeah. Even though it's not my preferred
If it's not
means.
a moral issue, it's a preference issue.
Yeah, which it's so hard for us when we get caught up in preference versus because our morality gets so caught up in what we and our preference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. We think, and I know I had to kind of deal with that one time. I was going to church where there was this idea that, oh, these are the special songs that the Holy Spirit's given to the church. I had to ask him one time, so is this the only kind of music that really is acceptable to the Holy Spirit these days? Oh, yes, this is what the Holy Spirit sings. I said, so the folks over in China who haven't heard these songs are sitting under a little tree?
yeah.
Holy Spirit's not pleased with their worship? Or the cowboy church down the street that's sitting on hay bales and twanging away on a guitar, you know?
Or
God's
the
not pleased
Africans
with
that are beating on drums with tribal drum sounding.
Yeah, and so this is the only type of worship that pleases God. And it's that sometimes we just need to have a broader view of the world and realize that, oh my goodness, there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't have what we have, don't have the access to it, and they're pleasing to the Lord in what they're doing.
So you're further down the road than me. The lifelong learning thing, I think, is a huge piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to start becoming that lifelong learner?
Well,
Because I mean, the stats show most people like reading books, for example, is one thing I would think. And most people don't, after high school, they don't even read a book. Like,
yeah. Well, the wonderful thing is now, you know, I know the excuse is always, well, it's hard for me to read or this, that. Hey, we've got audiobooks now.
Yeah, they'll
You know,
read
you
the
can
book
listen
to you,
a book.
or
Yeah.
you can, on your way while you're driving, no effort.
Yeah, you just sit there and you just listen to it, you know. And I can understand that because we all are, you know, they're auditory learners, you know, where I'm going to learn through hearing.
Okay, so here's the question though: how do you listen to it if you don't have any frame of reference for something completely new?
Well, you're gonna have to build upon something there. You know, I mean, I wouldn't jump into a book on nuclear. I can't even pronounce it. Physicism or whatever. Physics or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, and that wouldn't interest me either. Really, I mean, there might be some interesting things.
So, is
in
there
it.
an element to pursuing things that interest you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I know, like your mom, you know, she talks about, oh, it's hard for me to read and this and that, but she tears through stuff that has to do with vitamins and your health and
The health stuff.
food and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I go, you don't have a problem reading. You just are very selective about what you find of interest.
Yeah, so you just find the thing that's Emily's the same way. You just find something that's engaging, and she's the same way with health stuff. I mean, she just tore through these books on different health things.
Yeah.
So one part of it is just make sure you're kind of pursuing your bliss, I guess is what they say.
Yeah. And I think part of that has to do with being able to see the significance of it. Like why Emily was interested in that, like why your mom's interested in those things, is she sees that the value in that.
Right.
And so if you see the value in it, and the other thing is, like with books, I don't know, my experience is most books are about 3 times longer than they should be.
Yeah, it's because publishers need to charge some money for them.
Yeah, the author has this much to say, and it's like, well, that's too
Yeah.
short a book. That's a little booklet. So let's make a book out of it, and you know, and then it's just filled with a bunch of fluff.
That's why the library, so our San Antonio library here, they have an amazing app, and most libraries are doing this now, where you can actually get the books online, digital, and you can get them, so you don't even have to go to the library, you can get the audiobook or the digital, and man, it has saved me tons of money, because I can get through, and then you get to that part of the book, you're like, okay, they already say what they need
He's
to say,
out.
but you don't have to spend $12-15 on it, so it's kind of funny, you go back to the old school, the library, which has managed to change the way they present the material,
Right,
which has been a
flexible.
blessing to us, because I literally never set foot in the library. I download the audiobooks, I download the books, all on the app. So it's the same thing,
Yeah.
reading. But yeah, you're right. A lot of the books say too much. So back to the book thing.
Yeah, the other thing is don't feel bound to have to finish every book, because that was kind of a big deal with me. I'd buy a book and I'd get halfway through it and I'd start getting bogged down and bored. And this was before I realized that most authors don't have that much to say, you know. So I felt like, and then it would be like this tedious slogging through the rest of the book, and then I was dreading opening up another book, you know, because I didn't want to have to go through that again.
So that's a philosophy of yours, those too. Because I remember one time you got up, and it was one of the most life-changing things I ever heard, was you got up in front of the church, and you said, "Life's too short to go to a church you hate."
Yeah.
And I was like, how interesting. We think there's something moral about us sticking through. And it's kind of like that other podcast we did about the idea of, you know, sometimes we
Faithfulness.
Yeah,
Ride the dead horse.
I'm going to be faithful and just stay on this dead horse.
This was
until
a
it
good horse.
Resurrects. Yeah. Right. But you've got that philosophy in general. And I've had to learn that too. It's like, hey, if it's just not working, which is also why sometimes I'll walk out of new churches we're trying out, and really early, and Emily's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This just isn't working for me, man." She's like, "You can't just walk out of the church like that." But
That's why you
it's
set your
just-
phone to where it beeps half an hour after you come in the church. That way you can act like you're answering a phone call.
There you go.
No.
That's it.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
But anyway, that's a good philosophy, though, is you don't have to. dabble in it, and then but you don't have to stick it through to the bitter end if it's not working.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because again, it probably is a lot of fluff after the first few pages,
Yeah.
first few chapters.
Yeah.
So I think part of what you were asking, the initial question was, so how do you get that lifelong learning? I think is seeing the value of it and realizing, okay, this is something I need to do.
And you may never be a master or an expert at it.
No, and I think that's kind of where I am too. Is I've never really, I'm kind of do a little bit of everything, but not really that good at anything, you know. And so a lot of things are of interest to me. And so,
But that's hard for somebody who's been an expert their whole life. All of a sudden, which requires the humility again. Well, I'm never going to be an expert at how to use Facebook or Twitter or PowerPoint or whatever it may be.
Or speak Spanish.
Yeah. But hey, I can dabble in it and I can learn a little bit. And I mean, there's all those studies that show when you do something new, it actually creates new neural connections. So much of staying young has to do with willingness to learn new things that are just completely out of your zone.
Right. Yeah. To try something that you've never done before. And again, as you said, it activates different parts of your brain,
and it keeps you flexible, which is that wineskins thing Jesus talks about. You gotta keep those new wineskins and keep them flexible.
Yeah. Well, I saw that pattern in a pastor early on, and I thought, I just want to be that way, where I'm not judgmental of the new things that are coming in, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Each generation is going to have new ways of viewing things and new ways of doing things, and you can battle it. And I heard a pastor recently, and he was up on a Sunday morning. This was recently, trying to get people to bring a Bible. Now, phones are good. It's okay to have your Bible on phone, but it's nothing like having the solid Bible, the printed word in front of you. Going, lots of luck with that, buddy.
Good luck with that, buddy.
If you want to keep swimming upstream like the salmon, you can do that, or you can just turn around and say, okay, this is the way it's going. I'm going to flow with it, and I'm going to figure out how to use it to the best advantage of where we are, instead of trying to fight the world and get everybody to come along your ideas.
Yeah. Change is uncomfortable, but it is the way we continue to progress in what God has for us in the next season.
Yeah. And again, there's some things that are immovable, some things that don't change. But they're Scripture. They're the character, they're the fruits of the Spirit, and the things of that nature.
If you liked what you heard, please consider sharing this with a friend. For more information, visit joelmalm.com or rickmalm.com. Thanks for listening.